Welcome back to Investors Reality. This video is the next in a series looking at the financial implications of the current global crisis from a geopolitical point of view. And today I want to talk about the BRICS proposed new global world currency. You see, with Western economies in decline, the role of BRICS on the global stage is really increasing every day. Many countries, even members of OPEC and OECD, are now interested in the stability that BRICS has to offer. This is truly the time when the power is shifting from the West to the East. Recently, actually today, the Eurasian Economic Commission has proposed to create a payment system for the BRICS countries and the Eurasian Economic Union with a single payment card. So if this is going to go through, if it's going to be successful, it would merge payment systems such as Russia's Mir, China's Union Pay, and India's Rupee, among others. The BRICS, they don't want to develop another model of the Western economy and democratic process. No, they want a new model where all members have equal rights and opportunities in order to grow together. But before we move on to the question, is the US dollar officially over? I do want to welcome you to Investors Reality. My name is Nico Harachi and I'm the host of this little show. The US dollar is officially over, or at least it will be very soon if certain countries have it their way. You see, some of the world's most powerful nations have formed an alliance with the intention of ending the reign of the US dollar and potentially removing the West from the top of the global food chain. And in order to do this, a few world leaders are planning to create a new form of money. This is a plan that includes Putin, Xi Jinping, as well as leaders of Brazil, India, and South Africa. And this new money will soon, very soon, be a serious threat to the US dollar and very likely become the most powerful form of money on the planet. Now currently, it is without a doubt that the G7, they are ruling the world's economy, or the money of the world. So yes, it is a big project that BRICS have in front of them. It is a project that could forever change the way that we will trade globally. And in order to explain this, I think I first have to explain who the current holders of the world's most powerful currencies are. And you have probably heard about the G7 before. It is an organization, a partnership of some of the world's most powerful economies, and they include the United States, UK, Canada, Japan, and the European Union. Now, on a little side note, it was formerly called G8. However, with Russia previously being a member but excluded, so it went back to being called G7. And Russia was excluded not in 2022, but in fact in 2014, after Russia's membership was suspended following the annexation of Crimea. Now, the main reason for the G7 existing is to keep the power of the West at the top of the global food chain by strengthening political and economic ties between member nations, but also to help ensure their money remains the most powerful money or currency on the planet. So of the 6 most powerful traded currencies in the world, 5 of those are within the 7 nation currencies, however, with the mighty US dollar sitting at the top of the pile. Now, for the most part, the G7, they want the US dollar to remain the most powerful currency in the world. And the reason being is, if the US dollar stays on top, it will also help keep other G7 currencies there as well. So that actually helps them maintain dominance for the West as a whole. But the stranglehold the G7 has over the economic state of our world could be about to change. And it is, or it has everything to do with the BRICS, with Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, because they are basically a competitor to the G7, comprising, however, the world's biggest developing economies. Now, individually, the nations that make up BRICS, they are not so big so much of a threat to the West, but together it's a much different story. Today, BRICS nations amount for more than 40% of the world's population and more than 31% of the planet's total GDP. And by 2030, which is basically just around the corner. When you look from a historical point of view, the IMF estimates that BRICS countries will collectively account for half of the world's GDP. And that's not taking into account new countries that may also join the alliance. You see, recently Argentina has formally applied to join BRICS. Iran may also be doing the same, as Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. They are all flirting with the BRIC membership. So BRICS dominance poses a real serious threat to the West dominance. And there, the BRICS' first mission is to take out the United States dollar. Since the inception of the BRICS nations, they hold an annual meeting in order to discuss the future of their partnerships. And at the 14th annual meeting in June this year, BRICS, they dropped the news that may seal the fate of the US dollar. And this announcement was delivered by none other than Vladimir Putin himself. You see, he announced that the BRICS are planning to create a new global reserve currency, a form of money that would become standard in Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, as well as other nations that may become a part of the alliance. Now, the most important part of Putin's announcement were the words reserve currency. Because in order for that to happen, it would have to kick the US dollar out of its top spot. And right now we know that the US dollar is considered the reserve currency of the world. So simply put, meaning it's used for the vast majority of global trade. You see, today roughly 40% of all international trade is conducted in the US dollar. And almost all buying and selling of crude oil, and gas for that matter, is made in the US dollar. So this means that basically all nations on earth, they must, as you probably know, buy and hold the greenback. So the more US dollars that need to be bought or used, the more valuable the currency becomes. And the United States is the only nation that can control the printing or destruction of the USD. So meaning, if the USD need to buy more goods from other nations, we know what they can do, right? They can just print more money, and effectively what they're doing is that they're exporting its inflation to the rest of the world. However, if the US dollar were to lose its reserve currency status, it could devastate the United States of America and the G7. This is an outcome that seems that is really actively attracting the BRICS nations to achieve. So the question is, how will this new money created by the BRICS actually really work? Now, hypothetically, and I want to make an example here where we call this new money the BRICS coin. So, according to Putin's announcement, the new currency would act like a basket. So it would contain the value of the 5 member nations of the BRICS currencies, making it actually a semi-decentralized and much more stable currency than the US dollar. However, in order to give the BRICS coin even more power, it's possible that the BRICS coins could also be backed by gold. So, you see, since the first BRICS meeting, the 5 BRICS nations, they have been buying up gold like crazy. Now, increasing the supply by several thousand% per year. And this doesn't even include a very recent discovery of up to 12 trillion worth of new gold in Uganda. Now, I know Uganda doesn't really fit in here, but just hold on for a second. So in other words, more gold than the combined total of the world's supply today. And these new deposits, now we're coming back to Uganda, they will most likely exclusively be mined by China. Meaning for the first time in half a century, we could again have a currency basket, but a real global currency backed by gold, which on its own would almost instantly make it the most valuable currency on the planet. Now, needless to say, I guess you can imagine that the United States is not too crazy about this idea that the BRICS want to create its own currency, specifically if this currency is backed by gold, because it would mean very bad news for the West control over global economies. However, on the other side, of the coin, it would mean very good news for the economies of the BRICS nations. You see, if a BRICS currency was to be created, it would give these BRICS nations a much better grip on the economic future. They would be able to control more of global trade and wouldn't need to buy and or hold the US dollar, right? So the economies of the BRICS nation would also no longer be easily manipulated by the US government. And the US would no longer have any power over that money and would also give BRICS nations an almost unmatched level of economic stability. Now we're talking about, stability, freedom of speech and humanitarian missions and democracy, that America is so crazy about spreading. However, let's go for an example. If the economy in the United States would fall, well, then we also know that the US dollar would obviously weaken as a result. However, with 5 countries or more combined, this wouldn't happen to the BRICS coin. You see, for an example again, if the economy of Brazil would go into decline on its own, the BRICS coin could still rely on the stability of the other 4. So this could make a BRICS currency much more stable than the US dollar, meaning it would become much more attractive for other countries to trade with it as well. Well, I guess we can all put 2 and 2 together, right? And a BRICS coin could easily dominate the US dollar. And this is big news, but it's a very bad news for the United States. However, this is not the first time that the power of the West's currency has been threatened. In fact, the first time actually wasn't so long ago. And you might even remember it. You see, on the 19th of March in 2011, a NATO-led coalition staged an intervention in Libya. You see, the force was made up of several nations, but primarily it was led by France and the US, of course. Now, according to the UN Security Council, this mission was, of course, a humanitarian one designed to prevent another civil war breaking out in Libya and to end alleged crimes against humanity being perpetrated by Libya's leader, Muammar Gaddafi. However, as always, we know that the prime aim is not always to spread democracy and freedom of speech and all them goodies, right? There might have been some other reasons for the invasion of Libya. And as I guess we all, and you might expect, it has everything to do with money and power. You see, prior to the invasion of Libya, there were rumors that Gaddafi had plans to unite Africa. And according to, however, unclassified emails released via the US State Department, Gaddafi aimed to do this by creating a new African currency. It would be a currency backed by gold called the African dinar. And this new currency could have seriously threatened Europe's power in Africa. This is because at the time, and still even today, over a dozen nations in Africa, they're using the CFA franc. They're using that as their currency. However, it's also called the francophone, or these are called the francophone countries. And these nations, they are former colonies of the French Empire, and therefore the CFA franc is pegged to the euro. So it gives Europe significant economic control over the nations that use it. And also, the countries that use it must also hold significant deposits with the French treasury. So I guess you get the point that if Gaddafi had been successful in uniting Africa under the gold dinar, it would have weakened the power of the euro and also diminished Europe's economic control of the African region. And according to these leaked emails, this is exactly what, at the time, Nicolas Sarkozy, who was the French president, feared. So allegedly, Sarkozy, he had 5 main aims or reasons for why he was invading Libya. Now, these all revolved around keeping a steady flow of oil going to France and maintaining Europe's power in Africa. Now, Sarkozy's decision to overthrow Gaddafi was also heavily influenced by how much gold Libya held. So you see, none of these reasons actually match up to the public democracy story that the invasion happened for the humanitarian and democracy reasons. However, in the end, Libya's government was toppled by NATO forces, resulting in the execution of Gaddafi himself. What an ugly story. And the funny thing is that this story is really not so distant, right? It's actually just 11 years ago. But the media is not really reminding us about that freedom mission. But before we end, I do want to give you some final thoughts. And more than anything, I think that this just goes to show how important the power of currency is, and what some nations they are willing to do in order to keep their place on the top of the global currency system, hierarchy, let's say. And it also illustrates why a currency designed, or if it's a good currency, with a good design, it can threaten the global power. And in this case, it is threatening the power of the G7 nations, and that is a big deal for the West. So I don't know if there's much we can learn from this situation. It is a situation that we will keep monitoring. And it is also a lesson in stability and diversification. Now, I do believe, I mean, it goes without saying, if we would see a currency issued by the BRICS, it is probably going to become the most stable currency on this planet, especially if it's backed by 5 nations and by gold. And as you can confirm by yourself, the BRICS nations, they have been buying gold like crazy. So this power would also come from the fact that it would be diversified over these economies. And we know that the BRICS are very interested in expanding and letting new countries join the BRICS club. Anyway, this is it from today. I hope you enjoyed it. I think it's very interesting what's going on from a geopolitical perspective. I also live in Ukraine. I am seeing here how it's going on with the war, against Russia, a true, pure proxy war between the West and the East. But I think it's not over yet. And I do think that the BRICS countries, the SCO, they have a few jokers that they haven't shared with the world yet. Anyway, if this video gave you any kind of pleasure, joy, value, then please hit like, smash, subscribe, and also come and join the live streams. Remember, the future of finance is being built right in front of our eyes, and is being built on the blockchain. Who knows? The BRICS coin might even be in the future on the blockchain. And this is where we should invest. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Nico Arachi, and I am the host of Investors Reality.